In this video, I want to talk about how to use a jQuery plugin called IOnSounds, and I'm here at the web page, but I've actually already downloaded the JavaScript files needed, and I've put together a test page for you so that you can work with it already from the page I have. But if you want to go and explore a little bit more of the documentation, just IOnSounds.com, or here are the plugins. And what this plugin allows is for you to be able to have a sound play associated with anything with an ID. So I could get it to play on click, as in this example. I could also get it to play on, again, anything with an ID. So if I have an image with an ID, when I mouse over, it can play, and when I mouse away, it can stop. Or simply when I just mouse over, it can stay, and as I mouse away, it stays as well. So I'm going to get rid of that. So again, if you want to find out a little bit more about IOnSounds, you can go to the website. It talks about the browsers that are supported. You can look at some basic demos and some advanced demos. And we just take a quick look here at the basic demo. It explains what you need to initialize and to be able to get the jQuery to work on the page. And then if you wanted to configure each sound individually. So we'll come back to that. So I'm here under demo, just kind of make a mental note of that. We'll come back to that. Let's go over to Dreamweaver. I have defined the folder, the IOnSound folder, as my root folder. And this is what you should see in yours as well. There's a JS folder that has the JavaScript files and the jQuery library in that folder. So that's going to be needed to make this work. There's another folder called Sounds, and that has all of my MP3s in it. And then I've added 2 images that we can use for practice. And here's the index page that I've set up with some examples on it, the one we were just looking at the browser. And we'll go through this and talk about what exactly you need to have on your page. So starting from the beginning here, right after the title tag, we see these 2 script sources. And by now this should be kind of familiar. We're telling the browser we need to go to this JS folder. That's the folder we have here. And inside is where you're going to find the jQuery.js file, and that is the jQuery library that is needed for this to be able to work. Okay, so we have it right here. So this page, we're not using the web address of Ajax or jQuery to host the jQuery library. We're using the jQuery library that is already on this JS folder file that's in the JS folder. If you try to have both addresses, that'll cancel out and it won't work. So the other file that we have here, the script source, is pointing to the IOnSounds.js, and that is what's going to make this particular plugin work specifically. So we need to have these 2. Following that, we have an open script all the way down to the closing script. And so let's look at what we have here. If you remember on that demo page, they talked about initializing. So that's what we're doing here at the top. We're telling the web page what we're going to be using in our IOnSounds. So this first part here just means to the browser, I'm using jQuery, and wait until everything is downloaded before you start running this function. And here we have again, jQuery, or we're using IOnSounds. And what's important for you to know right here, so this is the stuff you would edit, is this sounds is the name of this folder. So if you change for your website and you use a different name for a folder here other than sounds, that would have to be changed right here. What is listed here are all of the sounds that you would be working on in your website. So the names specifically that you're using for your MP3s are what's listed here. Notice that they're all in between quotes. There's a comma between all of them except for the last one. Then down here, path sounds is again the name of your folder. So if you have a different name, this would be replaced. We're going to leave multiplay on true and volume at 1, although you can adjust that. And if you want the different ones to have different volumes, then go back to over here where it says to individually configure each sound. You can see how you can write them for each individual sound, and each one can have its own volume level. But if you're okay with them all being at the same level, you can just leave this here. Then what we see down here are a series of functions. If we start with actually going, let's look at the first button over here on the design page. So this is my first button, and I've given this button an ID of 01, and it says play beer can opening. That's the sound. So if we look over here, we see that we're asking jQuery on mouse over when we mouse over something with the ID of B01 to use IOnPlay, the jQuery plugin, to play this MP3 3913, and that's that cemetery sound that I use from the media practice. Then we see the next function is we're asking jQuery on click. So these two are different. This is on mouse over versus on click of anything that has the ID of B02, play bell ring. And here's the third example that I used for the image of the cookie. I just gave the image of the cookie an ID, and we're saying to the browser we're using jQuery, and on mouse enter, play the sound, the MP3 Abe, but on mouse leave, stop Abe. So those are the three different possible scenarios that I would imagine that you would be working with, and so you can use this as your page to copy and paste from, but we'll go and build on a separate page. The other thing to notice is how we have the two closing sets of brackets here. That's because when we have functions wrapped within functions. So that is important to remember that our closing script tag. And if we look down here in the body, you can see there's my button with the ID of B01, and the text that's here is what displays on the button. And then I have an image that has an ID of cookie, and another button with play that says play bing bell ring, and that one also has an ID. So now let's go and create a page from scratch ourselves. So new file, and I'll just call this test. And let's, actually we don't even need to open it up yet. Let's go ahead and copy everything here, and then we'll just delete what we don't need. So I'm going to copy from the top script to the bottom script. So I'll scroll up there again so you can see I copied the top two script lines all the way down to the closing script. Go over to test page, and this is going to go right after the title tag before the closing head, and I'm going to paste it in. So on this example, I'll go over to design view. Let's add a different image. I'll add the image fall, and again, I'm not even using a layout, but this is all would work if you had your divs and you were using the traditional blog style layout. So I have this image here, fall, and I'm going to give it the ID of fall. And go back over to the code view, and I can see that's in my body, and it has an ID of fall. And let's have a button here. So I'll put in a button. Oops. With an ID of, I'll just use my same format I did before, B01. And the text that I type here is what will appear on my button. So play the sound. Okay, so that's good to start with. Why don't we say that the image will play our sound that I have here, the 3913, and our button will play Abe. So in that case, if the only ones that we're working with are 3913 and Abe, I can delete these other two. Now I'm going to keep them in the folder called sounds, so this stays, and this stays as well. So now let's look at what we need here. We want on B01 on mouse over, so let's change that so instead it's going to be on click, and we want it to play, just for the sake of example, we'll say this should play Abe. And now I'm not going to use these other ones here, so I'm not using cookie and I'm not using B02, so I'm going to delete all of those. So I leave this closing set of tags, that's for this function, and I leave this one, that's for the function that they're all in. I'm going to delete everything else. And if I don't want to have to type it all again, I could just take a single function and copy it and paste that below. And I'll change this to say, so the ID of fall, that's targeting our image. And we could say on mouse enter, I want you to play 3913. So now let's just test this out and see if this is working. Control S. So on click, that plays. Refresh the page, that stops. That's Abe. And on mouse enter, that plays. Okay, so now let's get them to stop. And so I'm going to repeat this one. we'll work on the fall one, copy it, and paste it. And so now what we want to change it to is, instead of just on mouse enter, it's mouse leave. We want it to stop. So this is, again, I'm doing this, applying this to the fall image. I want, when my mouse leaves, I want the fall image to stop playing that. So let's save this and preview and see if that's working now. So when mouse enter, it plays, and when my mouse leaves, it stops. Okay, so you can go back and find all of those examples here on your index page of the different possibilities. So on mouse over, if you wanted to play, if you wanted to play on click, if you wanted to play when it mouse enters and then stop when it leaves, you would use the two of them here. And just remember that it's really important to keep the name of your folder, sounds. So if you change yours, you would have to change that here. You're going to just list all of your MP3s and make sure that you're including these two files and that you have the folder here for the JS.